welcome back to another edition of Around the Association. I'm your host, Charles Fallon, back in here with another episode. And boy, do we have a lot to talk about from the most prestigious weekend of racing in the ASCA. There's three words to describe what we saw at Computer Motor Speedway over the weekend, and that would be Ronnie Woods Motorsports. What a historic weekend for the ASCA powerhouse organization. And it all kicks off with Colin Ward headlining it all. 1, 2, 3, 4 finish for the team in the Windows 300, the first in ASC history to pull that off. And Colin Ward was the winner, snapping his 16 race winless drought, moving up to second in points. Does he have an outside shot at the championship now? We'll break all that down. We'll also break down Ward's decision to leave the team at the end of the season, considering, man, I mean, you look at how well this 48 team has performed as of late. You're looking at how well they performed all season. It just seems baffling that Ward is so willing to leave and give up, I think, what is easily the best situation, the best equipment that he'll have throughout the remainder of his ASCA career. But who knows? Maybe he's able to find something better on the open market. We've heard plenty of rumors about that. We'll get into all of that in the Colin Ward sweepstakes later on in the show. We also got to talk about the championship fight, quote unquote, because Todd Kidd is running away with this thing after the first half of the campaign. He's up by 22 points now over the aforementioned Colin Ward, 27 over Graham Darty, and I believe it's 41 over defending Cup Series champion Breeden Bennett. Is this title fight over with 8 races remaining in the campaign? We'll break all that down later on in the show. We also got to talk Craftsman series, and Ronnie Woods Motorsports is at the center of that as well. It's the son of ASC Hall of Famer Jimmy Hood, Garrett Hood, reaching victory lane for the first time, taking the points lead. This 18-year-old kid, man, he is the real deal, and he certainly proved that on Saturday afternoon. We'll take a break from discussing RWM briefly towards the end of the show, because we got to talk silly season and we got to talk CJ Barrymore Racing completing their full rebuild. Jordan Raynard signed to drive the number 17 and to succeed Cameron Atwood for behind the wheel of that ride for the 2028 campaign. 3-year, $15 million deal. So they'll have a lineup of Dunham, Raynard, and Adonde heading into next season. We'll talk about that rebuild and the potential of that incredibly young but raw and relatively talented driver lineup heading into the new year. And then we'll also break down the first race of the West Coast Wing taking place at Salt Lake this upcoming Halloween weekend. But first, before we get into it, we got to shout out the ASCA's Discord server. 100 plus members, fellow ASCA race fans, chatting it up about racing, about news and reports from yours truly, and plenty of other topics you can discuss there. Click that link in bio and join. It's a fantastic time. You will not regret it. And we also got to shout out Circle B Diecast / Plan B sales. Use coupon code ASCA for reduced shipping on any orders $20 and $30 or more inside the US. So, without further ado, let's get into it, and we'll talk about the headliner from the Windows 300 race weekend and Sunday night, for that matter. Colin Ward becomes the 12th different driver in 17 years to reach victory lane in the ASCA's most prestigious race. And I think that Nick Douglas summed this up perfectly during the broadcast. Look, man, Colin Ward is just a natural born winner, and he proved that from the second he stepped in that Michael White racing car back in 2022, that number 19 out of Orlando, and he stuck it on pole in his debut race. You knew there was something about this kid. He was going to be special, and he kind of struggled in his first few starts with Michael White Racing, but he eventually gets the contract offer with Ronnie Woods Motorsports, and it's turnkey. Right away, he steps behind the wheel of that number 9 car, and he is gone. He wins the season opener at his home track, Ajax Superspeedway, via a last lap pass, and the rest is history. Like I said, Nick Douglas said it during the broadcast best. Colin Ward is a natural-born winner. It doesn't matter what he's stepping in. We all know his incredible dirt racing resume. He's won the Lasagna Bowl 3 times, won the Morgantown Nationals twice, won the Kings Royal. He's won this, he's won that, he's won everything, man, on the dirt racing scene. And that was before he even got to the big leagues of the ASCA. And since he stepped foot in the ASCA, he's won everything in this sport as well. Yeah, so he's won a Craftsman Series championship. He's won 7 Craftsman Series races. He's now won 3 times at the Cup level, and now he can already say he's a Windows 300 winner at just the age of 25. And what really impresses me about Ward is that going into Sunday night, I think everyone was pointing at Chris Barrymore and saying that right there, if there's going to be a Ronnie Woods Motorsports driver that wins, it's going to be Barrymore. Because you look at Barrymore, he was fastest in both practice sessions, fastest in qualifying, set a new track record, all this, that, and the third. Man, he is going to be his year. He's ran this race 12 times. This is going to be his opportunity. I even picked him to win. I picked him to win in last week's pre-race column. I picked him to win. I thought for sure if it was going to be, this was going to be his best opportunity to win this race. And you look at Colin Ward and the way that he started the race, he went backwards early, but methodically, casually picked his way up through the field, got a huge shove there to Todd Kidd on that second to last restart. You know, the restart with the giant accident, 9 cars taken out in a 9-car pile up in turn 1. He pushes Todd Kidd just ahead of Chris Barrymore, and that was critical because it put Ward on the bottom in third from what would end up being the final restart on lap 83. And then he ends up pushing Kidd out in front. He takes second from Barrymore exiting turn 2 on that restart. And the rest is history because we saw once that 48 got into clean air, he was untouchable. And he just completely yarded Kidd and Barrymore. And the only driver within a couple tenths of him on the time seats during that final stint was Shane Park. So yeah, just an incredible drive from Colin Ward, and he didn't look under pressure. He didn't look phased at all. Just kind of managed his own race. He even had time to drop a little bit of sarcasm on crew chief Neil Anderson. Got to give a huge shout out to Anderson as well with the adjustments he made throughout the night. As the night wore on, the sunset, the track conditions vastly changed. They continued to drop and the temperature dropped. They got cooler and cooler. And Anderson made the right adjustments to keep up with the racetrack. While you look at drivers like Diego Urquidy and Lucas Sambert that weren't quite able to do so, you know, that is the hallmark of a great crew chief and now a Windows 300 winning crew chief. And I think you look at it from Ward's perspective, and there's no bigger way to, you know, kind of boost your stock on the open market than, I don't know, winning the sport's biggest race and doing so very comfortably. He lapped up to 8th place, Caden Dunham. So only 7 cars finished the race on the lead lap. And, you know, I was thinking about this while it was going on, but this race reminded me a ton of the 2016 running of this race because that was the last time that all Ronnie Woods Motorsports drivers led every single lap of the Windows 300. And it was Jimmy Hood starting on pole. He was out front early. Todd Kidd took the lead from him shortly thereafter, led the majority of the middle portion of this race. And then it was Bryn Raynard that ended up coming alive late and passing Kidd for the race lead, drove off, left the field, lapped about half the entrance in the race, and won the Windows 300 at the age of 24. This gave me deja vu back to that race. And young driver behind the wheel of the 48 showing up, a now veteran Todd Kidd making the pass for the race lead, driving off, and being pretty much uncontested for victory. And overall, I would say it's certainly been this certainly was a dull race, I think you can say, compared to past 300s. But I mean that's not any slight against this race because this race, the Windows 300, has just been fantastic. I think specifically throughout this decade, we've seen so many good finishes, so many just different, remarkable outcomes and storylines, and so many memorable moments and battles like Healy versus Kidd multiple times. I think last year's Raynard and Barrymore going at it. We've seen Healy and Orchidi go at it. We saw Kidd, Orchidi, and Schmidt go at it 2025. Like we see so many memorable battles and stuff. So it's just kind of weird. It was just kind of interesting and I guess a little weird to see Ward just kind of drive off and lead the competition. And there were no yellows over the course of the second half of this race. Got to give credit to the teams as well because we didn't really see many retirements from mechanical failures outside of Austin White. Granted, I think that's because nearly over a third of the field was taken out in one accident. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on because that certainly had major championship implications. But overall, certainly mid for Windows 300 standards, but definitely, I still think not a bad race and one of the better ones of the season thus far. I think for Ronnie Woods Motorsports, they'll certainly say it was the best one this season. And let's talk about just the historic campaign that they put together thus far. And this was just like the exclamation point, like the ultimate stamp. A 1, 2, 3, 4 finish in the sport's biggest race, a weekend sweep during the sport's most prestigious weekend of racing. Are you kidding me, Ronnie Woods? Are you kidding me? Like, he's stinking out the show for the competition. And you look back to, let's flash back to Utah last year. And that was the last time Colin Ward won, ironically enough. Since that race, and they scored a 1, 2, 3 finish in that race, it seemed like that was the week that it finally clicked for Ronnie Woods Motorsports. And they finally figured out these new turbo hybrid engine regulations. So you flash back to that race, they have won 10 of the last 17 Cup Series races during that span. 10 of the last 17. That's well over half. And you look during that span, Barrymore has 2 wins. You've got Park with 2 wins. You've got Ward with 2 wins. And then you got Kidd with 4 wins. So it's not like it's been one driver like Todd Kidd just stealing all the wins for the team. No, it's been relatively equally distributed between all 3 drivers, not named Todd Kidd. And then, of course, Todd Kidd with his 4 wins kind of carrying the torch. He's actually got 5 wins. I'll take that back. So, yeah, it's outstanding what this team has done. And they were behind the 8 ball with these regulations. Last year because they went all in, to chase the championship with Todd Kidd in 2025 that they did end up getting. And you look at them where Keybers Racing, I think they're still recovering from going all in, being behind with the regulations. They've only won 2 races in the turbo hybrid era, both from Graham Darty. And you look at one of them being from an invert at the Michigan road course. Again, let's not take away from Darty because he's had an outstanding season. He's still a title contender. One being, from the invert and one being from fuel mileage. And guess who was right on his tail in both of those races? Oh, yeah, it was Colin Ward. You look at the times that Ronnie Woods Motorsports have finished runner-up. You look at the season finale last year. They could have won that one. They could have won Randall Woods' final race last year with Todd Kidd. And, there's so many almost wins that they could have had over the stretch as well. If they got a few of those, we could easily be talking about them having won 14 of the last 17 Cup Series races or something just ridiculous. And it's already mind-blowing as it is that they've won 10 of 17. So just historic levels of dominance from this powerhouse organization. And it kind of takes me back to what we used to see out of Orchidi Bros Racing. I don't think we've really seen a team. I think this is even more dominant than Orchidi Bros Racing back in the day, honestly, because this is the strongest driver lineup in ASC history, bar none, easily the most talented in terms of raw pace. We know Todd Kidd has the results to back up his raw pace, but Shane Park, I think, is the best road racer in ASC history. Chris Barrymore, easily. We said it for years. He has the most raw pace of not of any driver, but like he's incredibly rawly talented. Like we said that for many years, and it's just been a matter of putting it all together. And the same can obviously be said for Colin Ward, who is incredibly versatile, one of the best road racers in the ASCA, one of the best plate racers in the ASCA. He can win these high speed aero sensitive tracks. His only weakness, I guess you could say, is short tracks, and even still, he's not terrible there. Like he can still bring home top 5, top 10 finishes. He left laps at Belltown last year. Um, they just have such a deep lineup. Like they go 4 deep. Any one of these guys could win any given race weekend. And it showed this season. They've already won. All 4 of them already won within the first 9 races. It took them 13 races to reach that mark last year. Like they've won 6 of the first 9 races on the campaign. It's just wow. And then you look at the Craftsman series. We'll talk about it later, but Garrett Hood is showing flashes of potential. You're seeing something from Chandler Mills. He has the raw pace. Like the future of this team is secured as well. And they have prospects lined up like Spencer Dunn. Like, man, it's just Ronnie Woods Motorsports, man, they're gonna be a force to be reckoned with. And I have to wonder if deep down Colin Ward is maybe somewhat regretting his decision to leave the team. Like he could have run it back here for one more year, making $17 million. That was the offer that they had on the table for him. I'm starting to wonder why he turned that down. Oh man, that decision is maybe looking worse and worse by the day. But I mean, I will say maybe he goes to Katie Bros Racing and they figure it out next season because they offered to write him a blank check to get him on the team. I don't know. Maybe St. Paul Racing is able to snag him and they build something special there. I don't know. Maybe he goes to Dexter Andrews Motorsports and they build something. It's just I feel like this is going to be easily the best situation of his ASCA career, and I have a hard time thinking he's going to be able to find anything better than this. Like you're in title-winning equipment, you're perennially race-winning equipment, you're in dominant equipment this season. Yeah, I question that decision, and he may get more money on the open market, sure, but if he wants to really build a legacy, he certainly has the talent to be one of the greatest drivers in ASC history. You don't win the Windows 300 at 25 and not have incredible levels of talent, like especially in the fashion that he did. Like he has Hall of Fame levels of talent. So I don't want to see it wasted down the line. And I just hope that Ward and whoever's in his camp, his wife, his fiance, I should say, and all that. I really hope that they sit down with him and have a serious discussion. Like, you need to choose wisely who you're going to tie your future to long term, and they better have the long term, potential to compete with Ronnie Woods Motorsports and Orchidi Bros Racing and Michael White Racing. They better have the potential and the funding to not just sign you, but be able to match what we're seeing out of the likes of RWM throughout the course of this season thus far. But let's talk about this championship fight. And I put fight in quotations because this really is not much of a fight at this point, and it really hasn't been all season. Like you had the one moment at Belltown where Bennett was within 6 points, and then Kidd goes out in the first race of the Michigan doubleheader and he wins it while Bennett finishes 14th. And then, yeah, there's not really much of a fight. You had Graham Darney entering this race 13 points back, and then both he and Bennett get collected in the massive accident. I want to break that down briefly. I still don't know really what happened there because I'm not sure what Gunnar Thorson was trying to do there. I think he was trying to, I don't know, just trying to cover off Bennett's move. Maybe because there was clearly a miscommunication between the driver and his spotter. And his spotter, he took responsibility for the incident. He said he had a bad angle. I'm assuming that he didn't tell Thorson that Bennett was there because Thorson just cut down like the reigning Cup Series champion wasn't directly underneath him. And part of the blame does go to Bennett for making such a bold move like that. Um, in that situation, like you didn't have to get it all back. He was really struggling on the first stint, and I get that he wanted to pick up positions immediately, but you didn't have to get it all back right there. We weren't even halfway yet. As a veteran driver, as a defending Cup Series champion, I would expect him to know better than that. So, um, yeah, I just an impatient decision from Bennett, and he certainly did pay the price for it, but it wasn't his fault. I think the majority of the blame has to fall on Thorson, and I put obviously the onus on that on his spotter, just for not, I guess, telling him that Bennett was there, or if he did tell him Bennett was there, he just wasn't there in time. But the end result is Bennett ends up out of the race, Graham Darty ends up out of the race, and those are the only two drivers without a DNF this season. So they were hanging on to the back of Todd Kidd by the skin of their teeth, and that was all without having a DNF this season. Now they both have DNFs, and you see the margins. It's 27 points back that Darty is. It's 40 points back that Bennett is. And Bennett, I'm borderline ready to write him off. I think that these next three races are going to determine how his championship is going to go if he can defend his Cup Series title. Because you look at it right now, he's 40 points back. And we had to Salt Lake. He was absolutely miserable there last year. He was pathetic. He finished 16. He nearly got lapped. That was awful. So if he runs like that again, I think you can eliminate him from title contention. Like he cannot afford to have another awful outing at Salt Lake, or he's done for. I think it's wrapped. But then you look at Denver. He can certainly win that. Denver and San Diego, the next two after that on the West Coast swing, those are right in his wheelhouse because they require a lot of equipment management, a lot of tire management. You tend to see long runs around both of those places, especially Denver. I think he's got a great opportunity to win there. He finished second there last year, had a great battle with Todd Kidd towards the end. But yeah, he has to show up and show out, and he has to win races because you look at for Bennett, he's been incredibly inconsistent. He has only 4 top 10 finishes this season in 9 races. To put that into perspective, you've got guys like Carson Smith and Chris Barrymore and Greg Healy with 4 top 10 finishes. They are at 9th, 10th, and 11th in the standings, respectively. Like you look at Bennett in his little stretch there from West Virginia, he had the 8th place. Then he had to run a 3 straight top 3 finishes. He's done nothing outside of that all season. Like he had that great stretch, 3 straight top 3 finishes. What has he done since then? Nothing. He's been outside the top 10 in the 3 races since, both times at the Michigan doubleheader. And then now he has the DNF and the 300 on top of it. So his title hopes are really hanging in the balance these next 3 weeks. And then for Graham Daugherty, it's tough because, he takes his first DNF of the campaign, his first finish outside the top 10 this season. Heading into Salt Lake, he ran really well there last year. So he can definitely bounce back there at Salt Lake for sure. He won pole at San Diego last year. That was his first Cup Series pole position, but then kind of faded, struggled to really manage his tires, and then was running top 5 at Denver last year before being taken out by Marcus Edwards. So I think that Daugherty can definitely respond over these next 3 races, but that's the key. He has to respond because the next 3 races for Todd Kidd are also really, really, really good. He finished top 3 in all 3 of these races last year, and it's really what kickstarted his championship push in the second half of the campaign. So I don't want to write off Daugherty because Todd Kidd was 29 points back after the Windows 300 last year and pushed it to a title decider. Damn near stole the title at Belltown. Came down to the final corners of the final lap. We all know what happened there. So I don't think you can write off Daugherty. This 2 team, they've had pace. They'll bounce back. I'm way more concerned about Bennett just because of how inconsistent he's been this season. I think that Bennett, if he doesn't win one of these next 3, I think you can write him off. But Daugherty, I think you look at him and Yeah, I think that he can bounce back. He's been incredibly consistent this season. I think he would have scored a top 10 finish in the 300 had he not been, wrong place, wrong time in the accident. So I think he'll shake back. And then Colin Ward is quietly now second in the point standings, and he's got 5 top 10 finishes, 8 top 10s this season. He's been solid this season, but Todd Kidd has just been on another level. And I don't think that it's over by any means for Colin Ward, even though he's almost a full race back. And it's just going to be coming down to these next, I would say, probably 2 races, because he struggled at Denver last season, wasn't particularly great. And then at San Diego, I believe he either DNF'd or something happened because he was a non factor that race. I remember that. I think he got lapped actually that race. And that was really when Todd Kidd really overtook Ward as the main title contender for Ronnie Woods Motorsports was at San Diego last year. Like his title bid really fell apart in at Denver and at San Diego. So you look at those 2 race weekends, because obviously he won Utah. They're going to be pivotal for his season as well. And I think that this 48 team, they've got a lot of momentum lately. You look at their last few finishes, they finished what? I think it was 5th or 4th in the first race on Michigan. He probably should have won that one had he not had the pit penalty. Circled back, finished second at the final race in the Michigan doubleheader, and then now has a win in the Winners 300. Like this 48 team has a lot of momentum. I don't think Ward is content. Ward is content to mail it in because he wants a big payday in the open market. And the best way to get a big payday in the open market is, hey, show these guys that I can beat your driver week in and week out. And he's done that these past couple weeks. He's now a Winners 200 winner. Like he's got a lot to prove. And I think that maybe his parting gift to Ronnie Woods Motorsports might just be a Cup Series championship. So yeah, we'll see on Ward if he can really kind of shake back and respond. If I think that if he can keep winning, these next couple weeks, if he can defend his trophy in Salt Lake, if he can respond by showing up and showing out at San Diego and Denver, I think he's got a shot. But it is potentially a long shot because Todd Kidd, again, this is where he really kicked off his run and he scored that big exclamation point with the win at San Diego last year. I don't know, man. Kidd is just he's been on another level this season. I think that's all you can really say about that. So let's talk Craftsman Series now. And Garrett Hood has really made this Craftsman Series championship wide open this campaign. Hood has taken the series by storm, I would say, this season. And I think there's an argument to be made that he's been the best Craftsman Series driver on the campaign. I think I was pretty ready to give that honor to Zach Tretton, heading into this race weekend. And not to take away anything from Zach Tretton because he's been outstanding this year. But you look at Hood stats compared to Trenton's stats. Hood right now, 1 win, 4 top 5, 6 top 10 finishes, 56 laps led. Trenton stats, 2 top 5s, 6 top 10s, 1 pole, 40 laps led. And obviously now Hood is leading the standings by 8 over Trenton. Yeah, Hood has just been remarkable. You look at outside of his horrific 19th place result at the Streets Computerville and his questionable moment at Bellatown where he kind of cleaned out Andy Green. Hood really has not put many feet wrong this season. And when he did, you look at the Michigan road course, he just casually picked his way through the field from 21st to 6th. I think it was actually, no, it was 6th. It was 21st to 6th, which again, for a rookie driver making his debut at a track like that where drivers have complained for years, it's so tough to pass, to drive from 21st or 20th or whatever it was from the rear of the field and a backup car to 6th on debut when his father has struggled for years on road courses. That's incredible stuff. It's absolutely incredible stuff from Garrett Hood. And he really has come into his own, I think, specifically these past few weeks. And I think that you have to look at him now, especially after this win. I think you have to consider him the championship favorite. And let's talk about Zach Tretton, though, because Tretton you got to feel for him and you got to feel for Hood Motorsports. I know that Jimmy certainly has to be happy about his son reaching victory lane in the ASCA for the first time, but he certainly has to be disappointed about his driver and how his chances to win his maiden race in the ASCA really came to an end abruptly, very abruptly. He was out front. Trenton took the lead from Drew Taylor with ease, driving away. He had the yellow, and it looked like it was going to be Trenton's big opportunity to make a championship statement. And then on a routine pit stop, Jack drop, breaks an axle. His day's done. And it's heartbreaking. You heard Trenton's passion over the radio. You heard crew chief Fred Johnson. He wasn't happy. It's tough, man. It really is tough for Trenton. And specifically in the championship, because he entered the day with a 10-point lead on Will Moon and Garrett Hood, tied for second in points. And he leaves it now in fifth place. He entered with a 10-point lead and he leaves in fifth because you look at the finishing order from the treatmypc.com 150, it was Hood 1, it was Ryan Dixon 2, he's tied for third in points. It was Will Moon third, he's second in points. It was Jordan Raynard fourth, he's tied for third in points. So like the championship contenders, they all pounced on Trenton's misfortune, and that just rubbed salt in the wound and made his first DNF of the campaign that much worse. But the good news for Trenton, though, is you look at Hood, you look at Moon, you look at Raynard, and you look at Dixon. It's kind of a similar phenomenon to what we saw with Doherty and Bennett and at the cup level, in that none of those four drivers have a DNF this season. None of them. Not a single one. And they're the only four drivers in the ASCA without a DNF on the campaign. So I think that look is going to circle back around to Trenton. And I think that eventually those guys are going to run into the same sort of bad luck. And it happens to everyone. It really does happen to everyone, where you eventually run into some sort of bad luck. It happened to Todd Kidd, where he just blew a tire. It just wasn't his day, blew a tire, suffered his first DNF for the campaign. We saw it happen to Doherty and Bennett, just wrong place, wrong time on a restart. It's going to happen to Hood, Moon, Raynard, and Dixon eventually, where they get taken out in someone else's mess or something goes wrong, or maybe they end up making a mistake themselves. Then, yeah, that bad luck with the DNF is I think it's gonna circle back around. So you certainly can't count Trenton out, but I'll tell you what, this championship fight in the Craftsman series is crazy. I don't know if anyone wants to win this championship, although I would say Garrett Hood certainly does with this victory. That was a big win. But other than that, you look at Moon and Raynard and Dixon, and these guys, they've been incredibly inconsistent this season. I would say it's really a battle between Hood and Trenton. I think those two have been far and away the two best drivers. And while the point standings might not show it, I think those two, you look at what they've done recently and you look at their stats overall, their body of work on the campaign, I trust those two more than anyone else to battle it out for the championship at Belltown at year's end. Once DNFs and everything kind of kicks in over the course of the second half of the season. But I also do want to give a shout out to Travis Wolff as well. Led the most laps. This 21 team has showed pace. They showed a lot of pace these past few weeks, and I think that his time is going to come. His time is going to come. He's due for a win as well. And they showed a lot of pace. And I look at Matt Chamberlain's performance at the cup level this season. He's been awful. He's been awful at the cup level in 2027. And I say, why? Honestly, I question why Suits Enterprises didn't promote Travis Wolff to the number 8, because I don't think Wolff could be doing any worse than what Chamberlain's done. And I certainly think that, if Chamberlain keeps us up, if he can't get this turned around over the course of the second half of the season, I think that Snoots need to have a real discussion about, hey, Travis Wolff is really showing us a lot at the Craftsman level. Chamberlain is not showing us anything at the cup level. Wolff is also much younger. He's going to be 21 next season. Chamberlain's going to be 25. I would honestly consider dropping Chamberlain off and saying, hey, Wolff, let's give you an opportunity in the state car. Show what you got. So we'll see on that. That's a developing story, but hopefully Chamberlain can get that turned around for that 8 team. Now, let's talk silly season here. And I did just mention Jordan Raynard, and I'm going to mention him again because he inked a 3-year, $15 million contract this morning to join CJ Barrymore Racing for the 2028 campaign. So this really completes the rebuild for CBR that we've been talking about, I think, for a long time on this podcast, something that we kind of knew they were angling towards, and really that they made official that they were going to go in this direction when they signed Caden Dunham to that contract last season. Plucking him out of the Craftsman series after just 1 year. And I think that this is more of a reactive decision, I think, for CBR to get Raynard under contract before I think where Katie Burns Racing poached him up. Because I don't think Raynard has showed enough this year to be deserving of a cup ride. He's certainly been better than what he was his rookie year. Yeah, he's been better, but has he really shown that much enough to deserve a cup ride? I mean, he still has no wins in Ford Development Program equipment, and he has 20 plus starts at this rate. He's also going to be 23 years old next season. So I question that, but I also think for CBR, they knew that if they didn't sign him, or Orchidea Bros Racing probably would. And you also don't want to get into a situation where Raynard shows you a bunch the second half of the campaign, and he's just going off, and it finally clicks for him, and he starts racking up wins. And yeah, you don't want to have it where he starts to break out the second half of the season, and then you let him go to OBR, and you have to race this guy for the next 10 to 15 years at the cup level. So I think Raynard has potential. I think he still does have potential, even at his sort of advanced age. This is an extremely smart kid. This is an Ivy League graduate we're talking about here with an associate's degree in computer science. Like, this kid's extremely heady. He's extremely tactical. He knows what he's doing behind the wheel. You don't see him take many unnecessary risks. You don't see him put the car in bad spots more often than not, and that's shown by the fact that he doesn't have a DNF on the campaign. Like, he really kind of struggled last season with that, but he's kind of reined that in this year. He also had a lot of bad luck last year as well. But you also do have to look at that practice crash at Belltown and say, hey, that might be the difference between why he's not leading the championship right now. Like, he is still prone to mistakes, but he hasn't made them on race day this season. I think you can at least say that. And I think there's potential for him to grow. And I think there's certainly more potential for him to grow past what we've seen out of Ian Adonde this season. But overall, I really like that CJ Barrymore Racing have embraced the rebuild. And you look at their driver lineup in 2025 was Chris Barrymore, it was Cameron Atwood, and it was Ryan Dixon, and they were going absolutely nowhere. Yet Atwood kind of racking up his win a season. Like, yeah, win a year, fine. But none of those three guys were title contenders, and Barrymore obviously won it out at the time. So they let Barrymore leave. They let him take the driver option. He leaves. He goes to CJ Barrymore Racing. They mutually agree to part ways with Ryan Dixon. He leaves. He's now at the Ford Development Program at the Craftsman level, competing for the championship with Raynard, ironically enough. And now they bring in Caden Dunham, and they let Atwood leave, walk out the door, and we'll see where he signs on the open market. But now you bring in Jordan Raynard, and you've completely transformed your driver lineup from Barrymore, Atwood, and Dixon to now you've got Adonde, you've got Caden Dunham specifically, and you've got Jordan Raynard. And I really love that they fully embrace this rebuild heading into the 2028 season. You've got three incredibly young drivers. I think that you're kind of out on the Ian Adonde sweepstakes at this point. You're kind of admitting that that was a bit of a failure, but he also just scored a top 10 in the Windows 300. Granted, he was multiple laps down, but Adonde has still shown flashes. I think you give him another year and you let him finish out his contract. Maybe he can show you more in 2028. Like, he is still very young himself. He's only 22 years old. He's won a couple races at the Craftsman level. Raynard, another guy with potential. We'll see what he can do. And then Caden Dunham has certainly been a smash hit this season. You've got to be pleased with what you've seen out of Caden Dunham. And briefly, I almost forgot to mention Dunham's save in the Windows 300, I think, is the best save I've ever seen in ASCA history. That was insane stuff. This kid Tokyo drifts through turns 1 and 2. I've never seen that before. Barrymore has had a couple of those saves where your jaw just drops like, oh my God. But this one is just at another level for Caden Dunham. And again, he's only 19 years old. This kid Dunham. He's gonna be 20 years old next season. He could potentially very well be a cup winner heading into next year. I definitely think he's gonna win a race. He's already won the All-Star race at 19. So Dunham, the sky's the limit for him. And you certainly know you have a superstar talent in him. And now you're just kind of putting some building blocks around him to support him and hopefully getting a solid number 2 and a number 3 option in there. And, I'm just saying, if Raynard can pan out, if Anande can turn some things around, CJ Barrymore Racing could potentially be, back into being perennial title contenders heading into the 2030s, because we already know they do have a title contender, a budding young superstar in Caden Dunham. But also, one other thing I want to talk about with CJ Barrymore Racing, they're opening a truck team. That's another interesting wrinkle into all this. In their full rebuild, is I think it's maybe them acknowledging that Adande might not be it, and they're kind of branching off from the forward development program and doing their own thing. Like, they signed Mason Brennan. Mason Brennan is not signed underneath the forward development program umbrella. He is solely signed underneath CJ Barrymore Racing. So they hold the full rights to his contract and his development deal, and they have full control over where he goes. Like, you're not going to see Arkady Bros Racing poach him. And Brennan, obviously a Truck Series winner, 4-star prospect, incredible talent in his own right. Budding young prospect. The kid's got a bright future of his own, and CBR now have full control over where his career goes. So I really like that decision from the team, and kind of just they're really hoarding all the blue oval young talent at this point. I think OBR certainly can't be happy about that. But if you're going to compete with OBR, this is what they need to do, is continue, taking this young talent away from them, because Diego, we know he's only got 3 to 5 more good years left in him. We discussed that. And they've got Carson Smith walking out the door. So I don't know where they're going to go with to fill their other 2 entries, but it's not going to be Jordan Raynard now. And it's not going to be potentially Mason Brennan, because he is now firmly under the CBR umbrella. So I really like that tactical decision as well. Just want to throw that out there. But now let's preview the action at Salt Lake. This is going to be the 3rd time the ASC has visited, the 2nd time for the Craftsman Series, the 3rd time for the Cup Series, the NDRL sanctioned track. And I really love this place. It's one of the most unique circuits on the calendar, just because of how vastly different turns 1 and 2 and turns 3 and 4 are. And you really need to make that compromise. And what we've seen is the teams that attack turns 1 and 2 and focus on solely getting that right are the teams that have success. Ronnie Woods Motorsports. Coming off a 1-2-3 finish here last year. And they just scored a 1-2-3 finish, 1-2-3-4 finish in the race previous in the Windows 300. Now they're coming to a track they just finished 1-2-3 at last year, and that they won both races at the Cup level. My goodness, just everything is going right for Ronnie Woods Motorsports right now, and I certainly think they have to be the odds-on favorite to win the Cup race. But we'll break that down in a second. First, let's talk Craftsman Series. Cup drivers are back this race weekend, but Keenan Dunham is not entering in the show. So I think we have an opportunity for a pretty good race on our hands, because you got Chris Barrymore in the number 16. You got Graham Doherty back in the number 22. You got Tony Del Valle the second in the 54. And then you got Ian Adande in the 60. So this is going to be interesting. I think that between those, it's a relatively star-studded Cup lineup with Barrymore, Doherty, and Del Valle. And I expect Adande is going to be up there with the job that Matt Rivers has done on the campaign with that number 60 team. Speaking of Matt Rivers, he's another guy. Keep an eye out on him, because I guarantee teams are going to be drooling over what this kid has done with Dunham at the Craftsman level and overall on that 60 team. He's done an outstanding job. But Yeah, I think that it's going to be a battle though between Barrymore, Doherty, and Delval. I think not to take anything away from Adani, I think he'll be up there, but yeah, in terms of Craftsman regulars who could take the fight to him, Garrett Hood's never raced here, so I don't know how he's going to do. Will Moon, I don't know. Jordan Raynard here was solid. I think even his top five here last year, even. So I think that he has a really good shot. And Zach Trenton was another guy who was kind of solid here last year. I think he went on an alternate strategy though, and didn't bring home the greatest finish. But I think that Trenton in that Hood Motorsports group, I think they're going to shake back. And but I don't think that they're going to win. I think we're going to see yet another Cup driver probably win this race weekend. I think it's going to be Chris Barrymore. You look at how he was running in this race last year; he was running solid until Cade and Dunham happened, and yeah, I think Barrymore is going to bounce back. He's won a Craftsman Series race, at least one Craftsman Series race every year since 2016. His annual Craftsman win has to come pretty soon because I don't think he only has like one more start after this. So I think it's going to come in this race on Friday afternoon. I think he gets the job done for Dexter Andrews Motorsports. Now let's look at the Cup side of things, and I think that Barrymore's Cup win could very well come here as well. Although he's already won once at the Cup level this season, and he's only won multiple times in the Cup Series during a year once during his career, and that was 2022. I look at Kidd and Ward. They're the two previous winners of this race. They're 1-2 in points right now. I think they're the two heavy favorites. Although I also think you have to throw Shane Park in there because this kind of does race like a road course, even though it's not really a road course. Just with how vastly different the corners are, I think that really suits Park's driving style and his road racing prowess. I think he's certainly going to be a factor. Um, in terms of who else can compete, Ian Adonde got a top five finish here last year. I think he's going to be a factor. Correction, I don't think he's going to be a factor. I think Kaden Dunham is going to be the factor for CJ Barrymore Racing and kind of taking the fight for that team after the big week that they've had announcing they're confirming their 2028 lineup. I think Dunham's going to take the fight for that team to the front as he has for the majority of the season. But I think that if there's going to be anyone that can stop Ronnie Woods Motorsports, I think it's going to be Rikishi Bros Racing again. And I think that it benefits them that the track conditions are not going to change as vastly as you get what I'm saying. Like as much as they did during the Windows 300, where it was a complete day to night transition and the track temperature dropped 20 to 30 degrees. This is going to be a day race. And we saw that in the early portions of that race, Diego Rikishi, Carson Smith, Graham Doherty, they were really, really fast. And I look at that and I say, man, I think that these three guys are going to definitely have a shot to take the fight to the Ronnie Woods Motorsports boys. And we'll see, because Diego has definitely struggled here. He DNF'd out of this race early last season. So I don't know how that's going to go. Doherty, though, he finished sixth. And then Carson Smith, I think he was running well early, and then he had a pit penalty, and then he just never recovered. That's another thing, and it's really tough to pass here. So qualifying is going to be super important. But in terms of a race winner prediction, though, I'm going to go with Colin Ward. I got Colin Ward going back to back. I think this 48 team is red hot lately. And even though Ward's leaving at season's end, you can tell he's motivated behind the wheel. He wants to perform. He wants to prove himself and potentially give a championship to Ronnie Woods Motorsports before he goes out. So I got Colin Ward getting the job done. And I hope that we see some good action in Salt Lake City this upcoming race weekend. So yeah, that's it for this edition of Around the Association. I'm your host, Charles Fallon, signing out, and we will see you to recap all the action from Utah next week.